Hope you're doing well. Tommy, first up again. What's up? I was up before the sun. Way to go, man. Yeah, it's easy these days, though, right? Days are getting shorter. Me too, Tommy. Good morning. As we patiently wait for Nolan to make his appearance, I'm here. Thanks for the patience. We appreciate it. Good morning, Daniel. Hope you're doing great, man. Shorter days are tough, but we have 30K Bitcoin. Indeed. Andre, good morning. How's it going? Yeah, the shorter days are just increasing the amount of racists in the group and everything. I know it. It's just like, racism just peaks as the days get shorter. Everyone just gets up so much earlier. Good morning, Christine. Thanks for coming, Christine. We appreciate it. Jeremy, good morning, Bitcoiners. Insights from the orange sun await you. Indeed, the orange sun is up, guys, even though it's gray and dark out. Indeed, the sun has risen. Just to add some suspense, Bitcoin is running. We're good. Let's have a coffee. Talk about what's new. All right, let's get started. Got to get some fake news on the board before we get into the good stuff today, right? So the New Yorker, right? The New Yorker. These people, so remember, if you wake up early and don't sleep, you're a racist, okay? But if you do sleep, it's something different, okay? The New Yorker says the visual power of black rest, okay? Black people are generally pictured as doing anything but relaxing, as being attacked or agitating or performing. The Black Rest Project aims to widen the lens. So indeed, guys, more than ever, if you wake up early, right? Now, here, Black people resting and sleeping is not racist, okay? So you have to sleep more, and that, I think, is in line with what we all understand, right? If you get up early, you're racist. If you rest, you're racist. So it jives, right? It's consistent. It's consistent. So read the New Yorker, sleep in, and you won't be racist. All right. Just a tip. This one's great. It's not exactly a headline, but I got to show the logic because it's perfect, right? There was not an insurrection a couple days ago in the U.S. Congress when some of these people went to protest the Gaza thing. And so they ran in, and some people said it looked a lot like January 6th, right? Some people said, whoa, is this an insurrection? Is this January 6th? Congressman Cori Bush, right? She has the following thing to say, and you got to follow it closely, okay? Because the logic is like, if I had a mind palace for my brain like this, I would have way more Bitcoin. I'd be like hardcore. I would be the biggest Bitcoiner. I would have so much Bitcoin if I was this smart, okay? If I was this smart, you wouldn't even be able to, I would have 22 million Bitcoins, okay? All right, so here's what she says. What we're not going to do is call yesterday's courageous and nonviolent anti-war, pro-peace demonstrations an insurrection. We're not going to do that, she says. This was good trouble, civil disobedience. That's what it was, good trouble, civil disobedience, right? She has a thread. And let's be clear, January 6th was not civil disobedience. It was an insurrection. So we're not going to call the thing the other day an insurrection, but January 6th was, okay? As a politivist, she says, as a politivist in Congress, I don't know what politivist is. Might be a misspelling, right? I know the power of civil disobedience. She knows the power of it, okay? Civil disobedience has been used throughout history to fight back against oppression, violence, and injustice. It's been used to protest the Vietnam War, South African apartheid, Jim Crow, police brutality, and more. Civil disobedience is often undermined and criminalized in attempts to preserve the status quo. I guess she doesn't mean that guy who got 8 months in jail for memes the other day. So that didn't work out, right? So he wasn't good enough. For example, Nelson Mandela was on the U.S. terrorist watch list until 2008. What? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was actively targeted by the FBI. That's true. It's no surprise far-right extremists are trying to criminalize and silence this, and it's no surprise. Yeah. But we must reject these harmful attempts, okay? The right to participate in civil disobedience is fundamental to our democracy. Freedom of speech and assembly are protected. They're protected, guys, under the First Amendment, okay? They're protected. But she's sending her love. Okay, she's sending her love. So that's very nice of her. In other fake news, Justin Trudeau in Canada has committed $90 million to fight climate change and to pursue what they call vaccine equity in the Americas. Oh, great, thanks. Canada doing its part. This is an old one, but I noticed it, and we had a few Breakup gang members sharing this with me, right? So I had to, it's from 2022, but it's a beautiful headline. Millennials are to blame for sky-high inflation, strategist says. It's the millennials, right? Okay, it was the millennials. So they're the ones, right? Okay, now we've got a few that come to us from the world of environmental news, right? It's always a really good contributor to Moscow Time. Environmental news, always the best. This is from the New York Times. More Atlantic hurricanes rapidly increasing to Category 3, study finds. That's from the New York Times. Reuters, Atlantic hurricanes rapidly gaining strength along U.S. East Coast, study says. New York Times again, Atlantic hurricanes are getting stronger faster. Study finds the chance that a storm will get much more dangerous in less than a day has more than doubled over the last few decades. Whoa. Here's from Better Planet. Hurricane scientist issues urgent warning over her findings, right? Whoa, without major changes in our behavior and a rapid transition away from fossil fuels, there is a trend that will continue to get more extreme, right? So it looks like we're all going to die of hurricanes now. That sucks. This is a pretty good one too. This is from Personal Finance in the United States. There's nothing to see here. Credit card users paid nearly $164 billion in fees and interest in 2022. It's only 164 billion. It's like half of what we spend a day to keep the banks alive. It's nothing. Or double what we keep the banks per day to stay alive, but it's nothing. It may get a little worse, analyst warns. And now we have our best Moscow Time submission for the day. It's from Greta. Greta's unhappy, guys. It didn't work out, right? She was really a little bit happy when they got rid of all the nuclear power plants. Didn't say much about the coal plants in Germany. I'm not sure she has much comment. But luckily, all this stuff in Gaza and Israel has elicited a statement from her, right? So she's calling on governments, politicians, and political parties, state agencies, and the police around the world to immediately stop the repressive actions and stand up for the rights of Palestinians, and she calls it genocide in Gaza. So Greta, she's doing it. She didn't look very happy though. Now, to move to our theme for the day, it's all orange pills versus mind viruses. So one of the things I've noticed with the Israeli Gaza thing, and it's actually, you know, the only sort of good news I can see coming out of it, is that the forums in which the mind virus actually spread, the places where the mind virus spreads, right? Schools, public service, working for the government, court, logic, the news, entertainment, all of these places that help propagate the fiat industrial complex, which is a combination of the military industrial complex, the censorship industrial complex, fused together. The forms in which these things spread, right? Remember, it's fiat money. So part of the fiat money and the propagation of it is the words, right? The words that are used. Fiat, of course, means declaration, word-based money. So word-based money being propagated through channels, nodes that are filled with words is a normal result, right? Which is why the public education system is such a fundamental part of the fiat industrial complex, because if you don't have an education system that's teaching this broad, generic, vanilla education system, it ain't going to work, right? So one of the good news pieces that's happened in the past few days is, it looks like anyway, something Bitcoiners have known for a long time, right? There's a reason I homeschool my children. There's a reason I have no confidence in the public education system. I would love to be able to take my kids to school the way I went to school when I was young, but I don't trust the systems out there. And I think many Bitcoiners are on that plan. We've also seen in Bitcoin, of course, our great success with education, right? We've been able to outstrip, out-succeed, out-compete universities. I work in the Bitcoin event space. I've said for a long time that the event space is taking over the vacuum left by the failure of universities to keep up with the speed of progress in this industry and to even handle the subjects as complex as they are. So one of the things that Bitcoiners have already shown is that our education models are better. They predict better and therefore allow you to adapt to the future a little better. We were ahead on this school thing, and this is what we're starting to find out. The world is catching up to us, and you can see it in this example. So the schools yesterday in America, in the past few days, have had a lot of this Palestinian stuff creep in, right? So the public schools, there was one in San Francisco where it looked like one of these TikTok videos, and all the kids are singing the song, right? And they're doing the old "From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free," and they're doing which we've heard many times on university campuses before, but now being used in high schools to this extent is we haven't seen this before, I don't think. Even in Montreal, where this stuff is a little more advanced, like the argument around Israel-Palestine, we have a lot of people from the Middle East here in Montreal, a lot of Jewish people. So the fights have been here for a long time. I can remember when I was a young college student here, and Netanyahu was just getting started. There were already riots because Netanyahu came to a university next to my junior college. So yesterday there was this big thing in a high school in San Francisco, right? So Gad Saad had the following thing to say. Gad Saad, another Montrealer who I've met, I was lucky enough to run into him at a Dairy Queen this springtime when the weather was beautiful and I was with my kids and we had a great time together, and it was nice to connect to him. And with him, we should get Gad Saad to one of the Bitcoin Magazine events. Speaking of events, I've got his number now, so we can reach him. He's had a book tour the last little while, so kind of waiting on him. I think he'll be a good bull market speaker. So if you don't know Gad Saad, he wrote the book Parasitic Mind, which is kind of where I got this idea of mind viruses. And that's really how he sort of frames everything as a mind virus. And indeed, I continue to think that that's the way to handle this Israeli situation. And in general, with the fiat world now, we have to start looking at these people more like they have a kind of communicable disease, right? That they have this virus that is victimhood and oppressor, oppressed, and all of these binaries, right? So more and more people with this education, with this background, should be seen as mental health patients. Of course, we understand the cure with Bitcoin. It's the contrast of the orange pills and the ability to use the P2P network, which we do here in the Breakup space, right? We're here to, make a kind of iron dome against the fake news for ourselves, right? Where we can all sort of track the infiltrating arguments and hot button stories that tend to persuade people who don't understand that this stuff is predictable. We could see it coming from a mile away. So here's what Gad Saad said about this thing in San Francisco, because it's hilarious. Here goes. See, if you are a Jewish/Israeli student in that high school, it would not be in the least bit intimidating or offensive to you, right? To see this group of kids singing From the River to the Sea. But if Linda, the 6'4", 280-pound woman with a massive cock, is misgendered in the girls' locker room, well, the transphobes should be expelled. Goodbye, West. It was a good run. Don't say I didn't warn you for decades. This is a pretty good example of the mind virus spreading. But the news kind of gets better, right? We see more and more people realizing it's probably not safe to send your kids to these places anymore, right? Something Bitcoiners have been saying for a while. It's not out of just a inherent antipathy we have towards education systems. It's because the proof is there. These places actually spread mind viruses. And if you put your kids in that environment, they're going to catch the disease, right? It's the same idea of quarantine. If you put someone into a place with a virus all over the place, they're going to catch it. Universities have been the worst for a long time, right? Universities, absolutely terrible. One of the more important nodes in the fiat industrial complex, as well as one of the important nodes in spreading the mind virus that goes into victimhood and victim ideology and all of these things. So yesterday, an amazing thing happened, right? A Columbia University professor goes out into the crowd of people probably chanting the same stuff from the river to the sea. And he says the following, right? He goes, I want this message to get to, so this is remember that this is a college professor at an Ivy League school. Columbia's in the Ivy League. We talked about the football league that it's based on, right? I actually gave a lecture at Columbia University to their joint law school and MBA program. Or no, sorry, it wasn't MBA. Law school and engineering program. What a cool degree. Huh? They had a law school mixed with engineering. Perfect for Bitcoiners. So I gave a lecture there a couple years ago on the frame that I've shared with you before, the frame of trickle down of cryptography and cryptography going into the hands of individuals and tying it all into World War II and Turing and what happened next and the cypherpunks and and Bitcoin basically being the last chapter in the story of putting cryptographic keys into the hands of individuals, thereby making us more or less magicians that can cast incredible spells that bounce off the ionosphere and all kinds of great stuff like that. So this whole aspect of Bitcoiners harnessing an engineering network in order to create money, or sorry, cryptographers harnessing a network in order to create money, Bitcoin. A thread that luckily people who have that background in engineering and law can easily understand. So hope is not lost for a place like Columbia. That class was well attended. And so this professor comes out and says the following. He says, I want this message to get to every parent who sent their kids to Columbia University, that trusted their kids and their children's safety with us. I want this message to get to every parent in America who sent their kids to NYU, to Harvard, to Stanford, to Berkeley. I want you to know one thing. We cannot protect your child. I'm not saying this as a professor. I should introduce myself. My name is Shai. I'm a professor at Columbia Business School. I am Israeli. But before all of that, I'm a dad. I have 2 beautiful children, and I'm talking to you. I'm speaking to you as a dad. And I want you to know we cannot protect your children from pro-terror student organizations, because the president of Columbia University will not speak out against pro-terror student organizations, because the president of Harvard University, because the president of Stanford, because the president of Berkeley, they will not speak out against pro-terror student organizations. So he goes on to explain what happened and how terrible it is and how the schools actually can't do anything. More and more people are coming to this realization, right, that the places that are propagating the mind virus are actually not safe for doing business. I've said it about Canada for a long time. You know how I've described Canada to people? When my smooth brain Canadian friends are like, why don't you live in Canada anymore? And I'm like, it's not safe. What are you talking about? I can't work in Canada. It's not safe for business. How can I work there? It's filled with people with mind viruses. I have no confidence that they won't act according to someone who has a mind virus against me, right? It's very easy to motivate these people to do something. So I haven't been able to feel safe in Canada for business. I don't mean personally, physically safe. I don't feel intimidated by anything physically in this country. I feel intimidated, or not so much intimidated, but I feel like I should plan to not have any entanglements with the government here, because I don't think I can get away with it, right? These people are absolutely out of their minds. And I was already pulled out of Canada before the truckers. So when they made me a terrorist in 2022, it didn't really bother me, because I sort of saw it coming. I was shocked that it actually happened, right? I thought it was like some outside edge case that I had to manage, some small risk that because the potential was so damaging, I had to manage, but I didn't think it would actually happen. And it did. It totally happened, right? I became Osama bin Laden in Canada, in my own country, totally crashing all arguments around 20 years worth of arguments around Patriot Act, where I was not a supporter of Patriot Act, but at least this argument that we wouldn't screw it up so bad that people born and raised in North America that have no affiliation to terrorist organizations would be caught up in the dragnet of terror fever. And indeed, the mind virus had no distinction. It applied to me, and that was it. And I was completely wrong about ever arguing about the potential risks of something like that years ago, right? So huge lesson for me. And there you go. But look, we've got this situation where at least we understand now that one of the major nodes in the fiat industrial complex, one of the largest fiat propagators, the public education system, we've been suspecting it was in trouble for a long time. It's now clearly dead. There is no more reason to go to college. There's no more reason to go to any of these places unless you want some mind virus, right? Unless you want to catch a little mind virus. But you should think of it the same way you think of COVID, right? You don't go around people who are spitting out COVID all over the place, right? Well, you shouldn't go around people spitting the shit out all over the place, right? Get away. Got to get away. Got to. Can't even go on campus anymore. Can't go around these people. It gets better, though. It gets better. Since everything happened in the United States, in the past few days, this is another piece of news. So the whole system can be propagated. The mind virus can be propagated in education, both lower and higher education. Public service, though, working for the government is also one of the incredible petri dishes to spread the mind virus, right? But since we've seen all this stuff in Gaza, things have changed there too, right? Here's something from Trio Francos, and some people are talking about it this morning. She says, congressional staffers and high-level bureaucrats resigning on principle. High school students walking out of class. Massive direct actions by Jewish anti-occupation activists. White House officials and the vice president getting booed in public. This feels like something real. Now, this is coming from different directions, right? It's sort of coming from people who are pro Gaza and people who are pro Israel. But the point is, it's shuffling the deck so much that people are becoming less comfortable in the position they're in and are starting to rethink everything, right? So public service, already one of the big things. Entertainment as well, right? Undergoing some incredible things. We can see it in the media. So one of the most amazing things that we've seen in the past little while is this, Daily Wire. Have you guys seen this, right? Daily Wire. So Daily Wire has launched a children's TV app called Bentkey, and it will come up with cartoons every Saturday morning. So a little nod to the Gen Xers out there who remember when only Saturday mornings were when new cartoons came out. Just before they started launching afternoon cartoons. We only had them on Sunday morning for a long time. So Daily Wire are going to come out with a new series of cartoons that don't have any politics in them, apparently, and that are going to be clean and easy, and you can trust them as parents, and you can just turn it on and walk away. But one of the first feature films they're going to come up with is Snow White. And they're going to do it with someone we had, I think, as a speaker to the last minute, and I don't remember if she dropped out or not, but Brett Cooper, I had arranged for her to speak at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami. I've been speaking with the Daily Wire folks for a while. I've been trying to get some Bitcoin this content basically on Daily Wire for a little while now. I think it could have they need a finance section, let's say, and they ought to jump into Bitcoin. But we were talking about people that could come. I really wanted their CEO, Jeremy Boring, just because I think that his Jeremy's razors, the she her chocolate and the he him chocolate, it's all funny stuff. And I just like someone who's running a media company with the headwinds that people have, right? They call Bitcoiners toxic just like they call his audience toxic. So it's for a similar headwind, and I think we're aligned on a lot of things. So anyway, I was talking with their folks, and I said, well, we would really like Brett Cooper as well, young YouTube savvy girl. So she's going to star as Snow White. And the reason I'm mentioning all of this, and the reason why it's funny, is because this Daily Wire project is targeted to go head to head against a Disney Snow White project, which stars a Latina girl. And there aren't 7 dwarves. There's 7, I don't know what they are, 7, they're not little people. I know that. 7 kind of hipsters or something like that. So here's, since they announced it, right? Since Daily Wire announced it, look at the fake news reaction, right? Daily Wire is making a rival Snow White movie, trolling Disney. Daily Wire takes on Disney with its own Snow White star, starring white YouTuber. The Daily Wire is making its own Snow White movie to counter woke Disney film starring Latina. The Daily Wire, these are all headlines, right, from various sources. The Daily Wire pivots to Disney remakes with Snow White and what? The 7 incels? So first of all, Snow White is not an original Disney production, right? It predates Disney. Disney was already doing remakes of this thing. Johnny, she does look like a cute Ben Shapiro, 100%. Yeah, isn't it funny how much, she doesn't really look like that, because I did speak with her in the lead up to Bitcoin 2023. So if she didn't come, she canceled at the last minute. I don't quite remember what happened. She was supposed to be a speaker, so I did speak with her and did get involved with them. But now she's going to be on Movie Star, so we definitely want her. So and then they're already getting mad. I don't know if you guys saw this, but this might be the funniest thing we'll ever see on television in this late stage fiat stuff. South Park has come up with its Panderverse episodes. So they're going to race and gender swap all the characters on South Park and put like black women or Latino women into the roles of the South Park characters because they want to be popular. want to jump in on the get in on the bandwagon. So South Park doing that. But all of this to say that entertainment itself, right, is one of the great spreaders of the mind virus. And we've been saying, I said it all summer. It wasn't just the X takeover, Elon Musk's S takeover, which we're going to talk about in a second again. There was other forces that made me think, I feel like we've turned a corner against the propagandists and the fiat power structure. One of the reasons why I said it, and I said it all summer, was probably the Hollywood strike. Not having Hollywood people, not having Mockingbird assets able to deliver their talking points every day is a little bit like what we see in America right now with the government shutdown, right? So they can't actually send money to any of these places. Ukraine, now the president gave his speech last night, right? Biden gives a speech last night, $100 billion for war. So I guess a whole bunch will go to Ukraine, and then a little bit goes to Israel, and everyone's like, can we afford this? Sure, we're the strongest country in the history of the world, he said, right? That's what he said. We're the strongest country in the history of the world, Did you guys see his double ball sack chin as well when he was saying all this, right? And so Biden came out. I don't know if it was the mask of the person playing him or something's wrong with the AI generating the fake picture, but he had a scrotum sack, right? So instead of the POTUS, you can call him the scrotus now, right? He had a big scrotum on his face, double balls. So check it out. It's pretty funny. A lot of people putting up pictures of ball sack face and wondering where the ball sacks even came from. Well, I didn't see ball sacks on his face before, right? Anyway, vulgar stuff, but it's what's happening. So, the entertainment question and the ability for these folks to now compete directly against these folks. I've believed all summer one of the reasons why the air felt a little fresher was by having the Hollywood writers and actors strike. That led to just less propaganda on the streets, just less mind virus capacity. It lowered the amplification of the mind virus propagation, which I thought you could actually feel, right? I thought you could actually feel that. Not having these stupid Hollywood actors make ridiculous statements, not having to listen to like a Robert De Niro over the summer or any of these other people who are completely afflicted by the mind virus, right? Completely afflicted by it. So that's the good news, right? That in this instance, we've got a situation where it looks like anyway, the monopoly that Hollywood had and the capacity Hollywood had to brainwash en masse, the industrial military grade brainwashing capacity that they've enjoyed for 80 years now, maybe more, seems to have been slightly diminished. And it looks like a bit of light has creaked through. So that's great news. Now it gets better. It gets much better. So you've got well, let me just go back before I even get there, right? Because Hollywood, all that stuff, absolutely a big Jewish component to it, right? We've always seen that. Ben Shapiro. Now there's a meme out there that the whole thing is controlled by Jewish people, which, I mean, it looks in fact true in the sense that you have enough successful Jewish people that have gone for careers in these really highly paid industries, right? So it makes sense why you'd have people there. James Lindsay, who I do not trust, right? I do not trust James Lindsay, but he is a ex-personality. He says the following: critical race theory has a Jewish problem. DEI has a Jewish problem. Post-colonial theory has a huge Jewish problem. My essay on the topic from 3 years ago has never been more pressing and relevant. Basically, any of these frames that the mind virus tries to sell, right? The really viral aspects of the mind virus, right? Critical race theory. It's much more easy to see the world in terms of being a victim, just exactly what Disney is trying to propagate constantly, right? Like we should celebrate that they cast a Latina as Snow White. Like somehow that's liberation for all, right? So there's always been a problem because, of course, the Jewish people are, they've been victims before, but it doesn't really fit the narrative. Now, there's no denying that there are Jewish people who use the narrative of victims in order to defend against any attacks and things like that, right? So that's all there, right? I continue to believe that what went on in Gaza was an attempt anyway to remove that arrow from the quiver of the Israeli people, right? The Holocaust thing. If you can get Israel to do crazy stuff, they can't say, "Oh, woe is me" anymore, right? So I think part of it looks like it was designed to do that, to goad Israel into doing something that removed their number one asset, right? And we can't deny the number one asset of Israel, besides all of the money and success and industry capture and things like that. The number one asset has been the narrative around World War II. Very difficult to deal with anything with that in the world, which is why eventually we will have to come back to the truth about what Kanye West said a year ago, which is that inevitably Jewish people have to forgive what happened in Germany. There's just no way around it. That doesn't happen today, and I can understand why people aren't willing to even talk about it today. But in history, eventually, we have to get to a point where you're able to talk about it again, and it doesn't just turn into, oh, what a scary subject, short circuit, don't talk about it, don't discuss it, things like that, right? I don't think we have to prioritize that right now. I don't think Kanye was on top of the target as far as today goes, but in the future, just as Kanye tends to do, he's a little bit ahead on stuff, and I think on that he was ahead, and one day it'll happen, right? But we don't need to push the point here. But the point that James Lindsay is saying, I think, is more important, right? That none of the narratives that spread the mind virus can account for Jewish success, can account for the Jewish story in America, which is one of the most amazing and impressive stories of success you'll ever see in all history books, right? I've mentioned many times the famous Mark Twain poem about the secret to Jewish immortality. Just an incredible poem that stresses, all these people have come and gone in the world, and Jews have been there to see them all and beat them all, right? The Persians made all kinds of noise, the Babylonians way after, the Romans, right? All are gone. All of them are gone, right? And Jewish people are what they've always been, just sitting there, being successful, doing their things, right? So the ability to even um, talk about this stuff, which is what Kanye was getting at, wasn't there because of the Holocaust story. So in some ways, the ability to spread the mind virus around this is changing. We don't know where it's going, right? But it looks like the conversation around this stuff, stopping Wall Street now, or sorry, Hollywood now, very difficult to have the same saturation and penetration that they once had. And it gets better, right? Because that whole conversation then moves directly into news and big tech and things like that. And you get Vivek here, who's now really starting to hit his stride on this censorship stuff, right? And he says in a pretty interesting conversation, he's been in Iowa and New Hampshire doing a lot of, although I will disagree with him on this, he's been talking about a fucking northern wall now. Fuck the northern wall. We don't need a northern wall against the Canadian border. Okay? Don't need it. So get the fuck out of here, Vivek, with the northern wall shit. Take the money and go spend it down in Mexico, right? Sununu and all these morons, New Hampshire. We need a northern wall. We have more crossings than ever. Well, like it's a big forest, right? How many do you even know you had a long time ago? Anyway, point is, America can manage the immigration of America through Canada, and Canada's not even really a country anymore soon, so it won't matter. They'll just take control of it. So we don't need a northern wall. Don't do it. It'll ruin my plans. I have a mind to do it the other way, right? So here's what he's saying about censorship and big data and big tech. He's saying it's not 1980 anymore. The real threat to free speech today, the government is using a combination of carrots and sticks to get private companies to censor speech that the government cannot censor directly. If it's state action in disguise, the Constitution still applies. It's going to rhyme. Rhyming is more persuasive, right? So if you can get this to work, if it's state action in disguise, the Constitution still applies, right? So I hope he keeps up with the rhyme, and it should go well. Now, because of everything that's happened in the past little while, even, right? I mentioned Elon taking over X, the writer's strike in Hollywood. Both of these things have greatly, hold on a second. Sorry, everyone, I had a crying baby. I can't sometimes not baby. She's 4 years old, so not a baby anymore, but crying for something. Who knows? She'll be fine. So the mind virus venues in which it can spread: education systems, public service, Hollywood. Right now, the mainstream media with X, I said for a long time, it's been weakened. Right, we've been seeing the cracks in it. We've been talking all summer about how you can actually see the gears in the machine now. They become obvious. Like how many times we predicted, oh, I bet you there's gonna be an alien story this week. Got Hunter News, right? And we see it every single time. So even this thing with Israel, right? Well, is it such a coincidence that just when the Republicans say no more money for Ukraine, you get another war, and you can actually attach some pork barrel onto the new war that everyone is interested in? And then I think most of us see that as pretty obvious and glaring, right? That suddenly all of Biden's comments last night were to tie Israel in with the Ukraine question, right? So he gives a speech and he comes out, and what does he say, right? He says, he comes out and says, let me get the exact quote here. He comes out and says, Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel, the need for humanitarian assistance in Gaza, Russia's ongoing brutal war against Ukraine. We are at a global inflection point that is bigger than party or politics. Well, he's right. He is right. But I wouldn't connect those two things the way he did, right? I would connect them in another way. And that is in this whole military censorship industrial complex, which is becoming more and more obvious and easier to see, right? So the Wikipedia founder comes out 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and he writes the following. Now, just tell me if this looks like reality to you, right? He comes out and he says, fast-moving claims and counterclaims. And Elon Musk has removed all the core features that made it even remotely possible to tell real journalists from fakes. Is that what's going on here? Do you feel like since Twitter was taken over by Elon, that it's become harder? It's become harder to tell the difference between real and fake journalism. You get Ben Collins, right? Ben Collins, right? The disinformation reporter from NPC News, right? One of the most dishonest people you're ever going to see. An absolute candidate for space drop. Absolute candidate for space drop. This guy gets everything wrong. He has never got a single story right in the past 10 years. Nothing, right? He got taken in by it. Unless he is an actual propagandist, which I think he is the dumbest person you've ever met and should be nowhere near deciphering misinformation from news, because he gets everything wrong. He fell for the drinking bleach hoax, find people hoax, literally every hoax you can think of. This guy falls for it 2 feet first. He still is falling for the Gaza destroyed or Israel destroyed a hospital story. He hasn't changed it, right? So Reason runs a story on him today. Disinformation reporter Ben Collins failed to correct the Gaza story. Perhaps the Walter Cronkite Awards ought to have had slightly higher standards. He just has never gotten a single thing right. They gave him an award for excellence in television journalism this year. He hasn't gotten a single thing right. So the good news is we've got Mike Benz, right, coming out against people like Ben Collins with a very consistent drumbeat, with a very consistent story, with a percussion to it, with a repetitive nature to it, where you can actually see the gears. And every time I read Mike Benz, I don't feel like I'm getting into a larger morass of emotional complications and arguing and grand theses. He just comes out and says, this is what's going on. Look at how dishonest these people are. Follow the money, right? So he showed right away who Jimmy Wales is to Elon Musk. He says, right, there's an intelligence connection. Jimmy Wales is on the board of Newsguard, the top gargoyle crushing ad revenue of alternative news in the censorship industry. So this is what Mike Benz has been talking about all the while, right? The misinformation industrial complex, which is part of the censorship industrial complex, which does exactly what it sounds like. It just looks for news that affects the narrative and then finds ways to discredit it, right? So he comes out and calls out the connection between Newsguard, which is one of these middleware compliance services, right? You go get those, they say disinformation, and then Ben Collins says, look at what Newsguard said, right? That's my reference, their reality. So here's the good news, right? So now that Mike Benz is operating, now that he's really scaling, when he came out and showed Elon what Newsguard is up to, and why Jimmy Wales would say something so mentally handicapped about, and just clearly the opposite of reality, right? The opposite. No one that I've ever met has trouble deciphering reality and real news from fake news on Twitter these days. It's become much more easy, much easier. So what ends up happening is it's like one of these, the scene in, the scene in here we go. Yeah. How did he say it? Let me just see, because Mike Benz put it perfectly. He had a really good line where he says, basically, this is like the instance in the Avengers movie when all the people come to help. They come back from the snap at the end of the movie and they come back into the fight. So he says this about Newsguard to Elon, and then everyone who's ever been mistreated by Newsguard comes into the threads, right? You get PragerU. We've witnessed firsthand the dangers of Newsguard. So there is one that comes out. Wayne Dupree comes out right away. Since 2020, Newsguard has purposely and maliciously provided negative feedback for my website, which called out mainstream media for lying to American public and even quoted them, which was disseminated to various advertisers, cutting revenue next to nothing and got away with it. But they give mainstream media websites great passing grades. California Globe. Newsguard is the most disingenuous and creepy organization we've had the displeasure of encountering. The instant California Globe began asking questions about COVID response, we were bombarded with demands to answer their lengthy, obnoxious accusations. Tim Poole says Newsguard gave us a strike because we ran 5 stories out of nearly 5,000 that quoted Trump. They claimed that reporting on Trump's statements was irresponsible because we should be fact-checking him instead and Trump was wrong. They now claim we don't correct errors because we didn't respond to their false claims last month. The nutrition label they wrote contains so many errors they had repeatedly correct it and have refused to correct additional false statements while claiming we don't correct errors despite doing so all the time. Meanwhile, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and more ran fake stories out of Gaza, and they get 100% by Newsguard. So you get more people. Dave Rubin, fun fact, I mentioned Newsguard once on my show on Friday a few months ago when they were going after PragerU. That Monday morning, I had an email from them saying they were looking into my show. So finally, Elon Musk does disband Newsguard. Anything with a name that sounds like it came out of an Orwell novel should never be trusted, right? So now the point of Newsguard and why they're censoring COVID stuff and why they censor other stuff looks more clear when you peel back a little bit more on what Mike Benz is saying, and you start thinking of the mind virus working inside of the news, but also to perpetuate the industrial war machine's goals, right? Watching those things sync up is, to a Bitcoiner who understands node propagation in Bitcoin, looks exactly what it looks like, right? You've got to get these 2 nodes in sync. One uses words, the other uses military actions, and how you manipulate people on that is a combination of their wants and their fears. You mix them all together and you'll get one of these crazy results. And this was all planned beforehand, according to Mike Benz, because he's brought out a strategic document called NATO 2030, right? And it was written several years ago. But he kind of changes the wording, right? He takes the government language, right, of euphemisms and stuff like that, and he just comes in and says it in plain language, right? So he rewrote important parts, important highlighted clips from this document, and he says the following. He goes, right, so it's towards a new strategic concept. He says that concept being social media censorship to protect its political center of gravity, which is an exact quote from the document. During the Cold War, we prioritized conventional military, but in the social media age, we're losing our political support because people spread anti-NATO narratives and conspiracies online. So we need to think of war as stopping our own citizens from speaking freely online. Then he goes on to say, we need to switch our censorship focus from external enemies to our own citizens, right? Which is another one that is a quote. The actual quote is, an increasing risk of the transatlantic alliance also comes from within. The landscape of disinformation is changing from identifiable external enemies to domestic actors, right? So saying it right there, right? Because our own citizens talk badly about us online, we need to treat their tweets as a theater of war. We need to remove the basic distinction between peace and war. We must preserve our political mandate. We need to push national censorship policies across all NATO countries. We, NATO, need to spy on and psychologically dissect our own citizens in order to see how they interpret narratives online that threaten the political mandate. We need 24/7 disinformation monitoring system driven by artificial intelligence. Every word our citizens speak, every sentence they write, analyzed by a NATO political thought crime radar system. And the exact quote that he's deciphering here is 24/7 disinformation monitoring systems driven by artificial intelligence. So that's not his words. Then he goes on, we need to use our muscle as the military to get political bodies across NATO to pump millions of dollars into brainwashing our citizens, psychological defense, and financially steroid injecting censorship NGOs. Oh, and we need to capture the media, the independent media. So that's what's going on, right? Now, all of that, right, put what we now know about the military industrial complex, the fiat industrial complex, all of these pieces in their place, and you understand how the nodes propagate, how the virus propagates, right? But here's where things get beautiful for us, just beautiful for us Bitcoiners, right? This is where the orange pill will inject some sanity and fight against this mind virus, because it's coming. It's here. We're here. We're here. And it's two things. Right? Remember, I've been believing for a long time, that Jerome Powell is like, the words he says, you should interpret them as a captive hostage, right? He is a hostage trying to give you blinking signals about what's happening or whatever, right? This is a distressed human being. So what he said at the beginning of the summer, which was that the US dollar has nothing to worry about, the United States has nothing to worry about, as long as we remain, and this was in context of BRICS too, as long as we remain rules-based a country with the legal system and the rule of law, right? That's what he said, okay? So thank the simulation, thank anyone you want to thank, right? But yesterday, now it is the Georgia indictment against Trump, right? The Georgia indictment against Trump, right? Remember, there should be a competition. There should be some kind of game show for people who can keep track of the different indictments, because it's not easy. But the Georgia one is the fake voter something, but that's the one where Trump has the actual capital punishment offense on him, right? And that's the one where there's like, I don't know, 20 people at the same time as him, right? So if you didn't see, Sidney Powell, his lawyer, not a good lawyer, but his lawyer from 2020 has pled guilty. Okay, so she pled guilty. So everyone, the fake news, right? Woo, Trump screwed. The walls are closing in on Trump. He's in big trouble, right? So, but they never learn, right? They just never, ever learn. So MSNBC, Sidney Powell pleads guilty to Georgia election case ahead of trial, right? So here's the thing. This is from Shipwrecked Crew. And this is what I saw immediately and what I thought immediately, right? This is like great news. It's great news, right? Here's Powell's plea. Here's how Powell's plea can end up throwing a wrench in the Georgia case. Yes, she is cooperating, but a witness testimony is only to facts, not legal conclusions. It is possibly the case that her attorneys believe her testimony, truthful in all respects, does not involve factual admissions that establish the existence of the RICO conspiracy as charged by Willis and Powell, and will not testify to any facts that advance the claim. It is possible that under cross-examination, Powell may deny the existence of crucial facts Willis needs for the RICO. The best way to think about it is that what they require, right? What they require is that Trump, remember, the whole case rests on this. Trump knew he lost and was lying to people about trying to get them to change the election. He has to believe that he lost the election, right? Any moment in which he believes he won and the thing was cheated, the whole thing falls apart. So for her to go and testify that Trump believed he won would destroy the RICO case. Scott Adams says it exactly in those words. He says, a reliable signal for brainwashing is the belief that Trump knew the 2022 election was not rigged. So remember, they require that. He must believe it was rigged. If it's just him disagreeing with the results, then everything is exactly as it sounds, right? You're allowed to disagree with the results. Their whole thing relies on him knowing he lost, believing he lost, and then lying and manipulating people after the fact. It is not about being wrong about the election. That wouldn't matter. If he believed he won, he's safe from a legal point of view, right? So Scott Adams says here, this isn't knowable and mind reading isn't real, right? That's an assigned opinion from the brainwashing puppet masters, right? So again, as long as she says, and I think she will, that Trump 100% believed he won and 100% believes that it was stolen and rigged, which I think is pretty obvious, right? Do you think Trump really believed he lost? Of course not. Of course not, right? So this is a big deal, right? Now, while all of this is happening, well, Technofog even says, right, Fulton County prosecutors dropped all 7 felony charges against Sidney Powell in exchange for a misdemeanor plea, right? So this is the part they're not telling you, right? They overcharged and they knew it, right? So she doesn't even have the misdemeanor stuff now. She is free to testify any way she wants without any jeopardy. This simplifies her life. This is not her turning on Trump, as far as I can tell. This is actually much better. She puts herself in a much better position to talk about what's going on, right? Now, all of this is happening, right? Where the mind virus is losing capacity to propagate in school systems. People are going to keep, this isn't going to get better. People are going to keep abandoning it, right? The public service, that's not going to get better. The media is not going to get better all of a sudden. We know how it works. There's no way we can forget. You can't unsee most of this stuff. And now that we have the ability to coordinate on X and other platforms, it's that dog ain't going to hunt, right? Entertainment isn't going to be what it was before the strike, I don't believe, right? They're not going to keep propagating this stuff. They keep losing money. All this woke shit loses money all the time. The South Park thing, I think, is going to be, remember, one of our best weapons is laughing at how stupid they are, right? The Panderverse and race and gender swapping South Park characters, that's going to be viral. That shit's funny. I'll watch that. I don't even watch anything anymore. I'd watch that. No problems, right? But here's what everything's in the context of, right? You get the rest of the world saying we've had enough of American corruption. You're getting all kinds of things changing. Just look at the fiat propagation nodes within America and how much they've changed in the past 2 weeks, right? Now, this is a story that many people haven't even heard of. Like, as a Bitcoiner, this should be the #1 story, and I've barely heard about it, right? I've barely heard about it, and I go out of my way. But it looks like the U.S. has suffered already the largest bond crash since this country was founded. Have you guys been paying attention to this? So it looks like, according to Bob E. Unlimited, with the most recent leg down, the U.S. bond sell-off is on par with the largest ever in history. And his notes go back to the actual Revolutionary War, when there were bonds issued in the British colony of America. It's been since then. As shown next, it's also in line with the largest falls of major countries that didn't lose a war or have hyperinflation, right? So the bond market cratering. This is what he says, right? To put this U.S. sell-off into broader perspective, highlights that the 30% drop in U.S. bonds is on par with the largest historical declines in the U.K. Notable also that the U.K. bond sell-off is so far is also on par with those declines. Some larger declines have happened in history, but have been very rare and mostly been caused by hyperinflation/domestic revolution. And as someone reminds us, these are in local currency, so losses in purchasing power, global currency, gold terms were much larger. This is, of course, the old adage that just because an asset is cheap doesn't mean that it can't get cheaper. Those that have been around markets long enough viscerally know the truth in that perspective, but it is worth appreciating that you are betting on for further shorts. While stocks have come down a little, they remain not too far off their peak levels, while the bond market has seen a once in a 250-year drop, which indicates an extraordinary valuation divergence relative to history. Bond declines by their nature are self-correcting as higher yield limits private sector borrowing and entice yield-sensitive investors. Equity declines are the exact opposite, as declines create worse economic conditions and cause buyers to demand higher risk premiums. So all this to say, the bonds are breaking. The bonds are breaking. They can't keep going. So all of this mind virus shit and propagation is falling apart. And the very thing to which it is coordinated to do, in the case of fiat, extend and pretend, extend the finance of these markets, extend the finance of war, all of these things, it doesn't look like it's going to work. It looks like it's actually over. And we still have a survivability question between now and 2024. I continue to believe that the markets will be so bad, it will cause what we talked about yesterday. Trump is going to have to embrace Bitcoin. He's going to have to become a fan because he's not dealing with the same cards he had back in 2019 when he said he wasn't a fan of Bitcoin. I think RFK's plan of backing the US dollar and stabilizing with Bitcoin is going to be he's not going to have a choice. He's going to have to do something. And this will probably be it. So all of that to say, the orange pill cure for the virus of the mind that's propagating looks more and more ready at the right time, right? That we're serving up this cure. And again, any world where we now understand, if it does become clear to people that we shouldn't have much confidence in our democracy and in our systems, right? Remember, we've talked today about how everything is broken, like everything, right? Now, would it be an amazing coincidence that the one thing that isn't is all 50 election systems in all states? Does that make any sense? Right? So the orange pill of all orange pills is coming, and we just got to wait. That's where we're at. It's things continue to look like they're heading in our direction. You never know. You never know. All right, let me see what we got here. Let me see what we got. Oops. Moving out of the way so I can see some of these. For transgender athlete is amazing. How crazy are things going to get in the next year? Pretty bad. Pretty bad. It's all crazy from here on out. Yeah, it's not going to get easier. Do you think Biden's wars goes as far as drafting Gen Zs? They might try. Yeah, I don't think they'll show up, but they might try. It would be great if they try. Funny. Draft Biden. I mean, he can't send Hunter to Gaza. That would be funny. That would be funny. Would you support Canada joining the union as a member state? Yeah, no, I think that's inevitable, Jose. I think that the solution here that you're going to see in 2024, between 2024 and 2028, there's going to be a renegotiation of state involvement with DC, with Washington itself, and the federal construct. And states' rights are going to matter more than anything. And whatever new deal this is, it'll be attractive to certain Canadian provinces. So I don't think all of Canada. So what we're saying here is Canada, but there won't be a Canada. Canada is a, like Washington, D.C., it's fake. It's just a construct of the actual states of Canada getting together. So this Canadian federalism and American federalism are very similar. Quebec is the most self-aware of all of this. That's why Quebec, even in international law, treats other provinces of the countries not out of like it's not an insulting thing or anything like that. It's because the legal systems are different, and that's how you deal with other states, even though they're other provinces. So in the case of Quebec, if you follow our international private law, which is book 10 of our civil code, Quebec uses the Napoleonic Code. It treats United States as Ontario, right, as far as the legal system is concerned. So it treats France the same way too, right? They're just other states. So and everything you have to know about international private law is simple. It's which forum will you litigate in, and which type of law will you use. So in the case of Quebec, those are important questions all the time, but we're used to doing it. So my prediction is that the middle provinces and Atlantic provinces individually join the United States. Instead of being provinces, they will join as states in a reconfigured deal. They might even be able to stay both. I don't think Canada survives. I think British Columbia could make it on its own. Ontario could make it on its own. And Quebec could obviously make it on its own. So I predict, U.S. gets its land bridge because the territories in the north, Yukon and the Northwest Territories, those are not states. Those are basically federally controlled jurisdictions. So if you erase Canada, which has to happen, if the states separate, there is no such thing as Canada anymore. You don't get to just assume the rump of it if you're Ontario. So they don't get to actually have the Northwest Territories. They become free land. They might have a say in what goes on, but I imagine it shouldn't be too difficult to get Alberta and Alaska to agree to find a way to deal with Yukon in some form of beneficial way for the local. There's 50,000 people in all of Yukon, so it's not that big of a deal. But it'll be some joint Alberta Alaska situation. And maybe they'll become territories. Maybe they'll become other U.S. territories, the way U.S. used to have territories. So maybe they'll absorb the U.S. territorial model and go that way. But I don't imagine anyone will be able to keep them. Ontario can't keep it, right? That they're just too useless. So, and Ontario will have its own problems, and they already have their own empty quarter that's bigger than Texas, right? The whole north part of Ontario is absolutely empty, and so what do they need more empty land for? They don't. Same as Quebec. We've got, spaces larger than Alaska in Quebec that are absolutely empty. Now, they're not as commercially exploitable as Alaska, I don't think. We haven't looked through all of it yet, but I doubt we'll even get to it. It's just too big. So America will get a land bridge to Alaska and will grow. And we'll have the entire Maritimes of Canada, the Atlantic provinces. There's no one to protect them. And they are, I love Atlantic Canadians. I really do. But the truth of the matter is they're the dumbest Canadians, right? They're the stupidest. So I don't know what to say. There's nothing we can do for them. Just go look at how they dealt with COVID over there, and you'll get an insight into how they still watch and believe the news. They're so far behind. I think they're the most behind Western people in anywhere, right? They don't know what's going on. They have no idea. They have no clue. So it's a problem. It's really a problem. So they'll just have to, and they don't have any say in their future. They're like Europe. They don't have demographics. They'll just go where they'll let whoever picks them up, right? They're like the lowest of, then they're not going to be successful. So if no one picks them up, they're fucked. No one's going to look out for them. Quebec doesn't give a shit at all and never has. So one of the reasons why Canada doesn't work, that no one actually does anything to get along with each other in Canada. It doesn't work east to west. Quebec doesn't give two shits. And why should they, right? Why should they? They have enough trouble in their own place, and the country never made sense. It doesn't make sense. So that's going to become explicit, that it doesn't make sense. So we just don't treat our neighbors well enough. There's no excuse for the country, right? So I love the neighbors. I think everyone will do better off this way. Everyone will be better off. That's what I believe, right? I'd rather add Greenland. Yeah, I would take, I would absolutely take Greenland. Well, I mean, it's the same stuff. I think you get a bit of secret stuff in Greenland, though, according to my, I think there might have been, Greenland. Why is it so icy? So I think you're going to find more stuff there. But yeah, Greenland is good. I mean, Trump's thing to buy Greenland was awesome. It was hilarious. I think they'll get Greenland too. Again, Denmark can't handle Greenland. There's nothing for them to do there. Europe's done. There's toast. Right. Nolan, would you support? Oh yeah, I just read that. What am I talking about? If you are captured, you are prone to any government narrative. It's true. Guilty on one misdemeanor. Yeah. He said a year earlier they would rig election 2020. Yeah, it looks like it. How early should we orange pill our kids? I mean, what I do with my kids is I just describe villain money, right? Everything like villains and villain money. Whenever they see a US dollar, that's villain money, daddy. I told them they captured. My kids believe that Satoshi Nakamoto is actually being held. Not held. They haven't quite figured it out. They think he's got to stay secret, and they don't really get why he can't be public, and they want to rescue Satoshi and from the villain money. And so you can, I mean, I've never stopped teaching them about this stuff. I don't think there's a right age. I don't think you want to bore them with censorship resistance or anything like that, but you can definitely tell them there's villain money that makes people do bad things. You can blame money for the bad stuff that the kids observe in the world, which I think is appropriate, right? Which is one of our benefits, because people are already persuaded to do that. Most people have been persuaded to not trust money and banks and governments. And that's one of our best weapons, is that most people are likely to believe this stuff once we get them on the road to believing it. And that will, once you start on this path, it will dominate. And we're close to being able to do it. This Gaza thing has been, it sort of free radicals, right? It pops people off of their, however they've been tethered, right, to the fake news. All right, team. Thanks for coming this morning. That's all I got. I'm gonna be on the Q&A podcast in about 55 minutes. That's with Q and Alex McShane. You'll be able to catch that, I believe, on their YouTube channel, Q&A. I think they're on Rumble. And they also are really good at streaming on Zapstream, which I do, but I think it broke again today. It hasn't been working for me the past couple of days. I had a bit of trouble topping up my Zap wallet, but I figured it out yesterday, so I topped it up. But it didn't seem to have worked today either. But we'll be on theirs, so come around. It'll be a lot of fun. They have a really good show. They call it Q&A. So Q, right? That's Q's name, and A, Alex. So all they do is answer questions. They want to answer 21 million questions about Bitcoin in the run of the show. So they're, I don't know, I'd question 100 and something, but it's a fun conceit. And Alex McShane and I program the Bitcoin Magazine shows together. So he's a colleague, and I used to work with Q, who I like a lot, and I think he's got a good future in Bitcoin broadcasting. All right, team. Thanks, CB, and we shall see you all tomorrow. Peace.